So if you like to cook, if you say, oh, cooking is my hobby, or I really love to cook for my family, and you wouldn't be watching my Instagram Live if you didn't describe yourself somewhat in a category that loves to do that kind of thing, then you should be practicing knife skills. Now, what does practicing knife skills mean? It means you put a big Ziploc bag in your freezer, and every day, cut an onion, a carrot, celery, potato, and when you're done practicing, you have this big pile of cut vegetables, some good, some not. You can use them that night for cooking, or you can just shove them in a bag in the freezer. And when that bag gets big and overstuffed, you can make vegetable soup. It's that simple. But the more you practice, the faster you will find yourself whipping through recipes, because there are only about 9 different cuts that you really need to master. And I would argue that if you only mastered 4 or 5 of them, you'd be able to cook any dish in the whole world and do it quickly and efficiently. Later on in the wintertime, as we get into some of the other recipes we're doing, I'm going to show you how to use different shun knives to butcher a chicken. And I'm going to show you how to fillet a fish, right? Which are the 2 things I would encourage you to do, because if you fillet a fish, then you have the frame to make stock. It's also a really good skill set to have. And, whole chickens are whatever, $7 a pound, and pieces of chicken are like $15 a pound in some grocery stores. So you save a lot of money, plus you get the bones to make stock, and you really get to do some fun cooking in the wintertime. So I would argue that one of the key things that you really need to know how to do is cut things, use your knives. So this is I'll just call it a hybridized style of knife. This is, a shun. It's one of my favorite knives. It's a dual core knife in that it has stainless on the outside and it has carbon steel on the inside to retain its edge. It has a Damascus finish. That little printing on there is called a Damascus finish. And it has a handle and shape that is both European and Japanese at the same time. I think this is a super attractive line that they have, and I could have picked any knife. They have a Japanese style knife here, blunt nose vegetable knife. This is their Santoku from another line. What else do we have here? A very typical, the blade at least, French style serrated knife. We can get into all that stuff as the rest of our cooking time together over the holidays unfolds. But while this is sweating, I wanted to show you how to make some basic cuts and how to practice them at home so that you guys find cooking to be less of a chore and more of an enjoyable experience, right? Okay, so first thing that I want to show you is let's go through some, well, they have French names because the French codified it. Batons and Alamets, which are literally sticks and matchsticks, and different sizes of dice. And we can do that all with this carrot. I washed it. I don't peel it because, if I'm practicing, I don't need to go through that extra step. I also don't mind the peel being on the carrot if I'm using an organic carrot that is been washed and dried. And all I'm going to do, I'm just going to trim the ends off. That would go into my bag for myself. And I'm going to make a cut right here. I'm going to place the tip of my knife down, turn sideways so you can see it, and I'm just going to push the knife through to make a nice, clean cut. And now I have this 2-inch long piece of carrot, okay? First thing that I want to do is I want to cut this into basically 1/4-inch slices. So 1/4-inch, and you notice I'm pushing the knife down, letting the knife do the work and allowing the blade of the knife, which I keep sharp all the time. We'll get to how I do that in a minute or two. And I just push it down. I stroke through the carrot. What that allows me to do is I push it through is to keep it at a 1/4-inch all the way. If I wiggle or do some other sort of knife move, I'm not going to get a uniform all the way through 1/4-inch knife, 1/4-inch slice. I can keep my wrist straight. If I go at an angle, it's going to bow out. If I go at this angle, it's going to get narrower. But if I just push down from the front and keep my eyes locked on it, I'm just going to get a nice 1/4 inch piece, okay? So now I have these 2 bars that are a 1/4 inch thick and 2 inches long, and however wide that carrot is. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this off. We'll do something else with that. I'm just trimming up those curvy sides because I want to be really precise. This is when if you're coming to my house tonight and I'm going to make coq au vin, I want really beautiful carrot dice into my dish. And I'm just going to make 1/4 inch cuts here, doing the same thing, tip of the knife down and driving my knife through. So now I have what are commonly referred to as batons. They are a 1/4 inch by a 1/4 inch by a 1/4 inch by 2 inches long. That is a classic baton, right? So now, how do I get perfect 1/4 inch dice? Take 2 or 3 of these, whatever's comfortable for you. And this time you can do the push method, or you could lay the tip of your knife down and rock it. Either way at this point. And just cut. And I'm just sliding it through the same motion. And now I have perfect 1/4 inch dice. The knife never leaves my cutting board. The tip of the knife never left my cutting board. Why is that important? Because as you're learning to do this, if your knife is going all over the place, you have more of a chance to cut yourself. Now, I'm going to take a piece of carrot and I'm going to show you what you shouldn't do. There are 2 places most people cut themselves. One, if they're poking at their food with the tip of their knife, if you're cutting improperly here, you're going to nick the front of your forefinger or another finger. If you have lazy thumb and your thumb slides through, you're going to cut the edge of your thumb. Those are the 2 places you're going to cut yourself the most. Most people don't accidentally take a chef's knife when they're cutting carrots and put it through their hand. By the way, vegetables are fully sweated. In goes my wine. In goes my clam juice, your mussel broth, your fish stock, combinations of all of them, and we're just going to let that come to a boil before we put our seafood in.
Just
so
a
I want.
reminder of what you're cooking.
Oh yeah, we're doing a fish and mussel chowder, which you can make with just clams, just fish, with shrimp and mussels. You can interchange anything with it. It is the most simple and easy sort of fish soup that I know that everybody loves. If you slide your thumb out when you're coming down, if you have lazy thumb, you're going to cut your thumb. If you poke at it with the tip of the knife, you're going to nip the edge of your finger, which is why if I use this finger, my forefinger knuckle, as a guide, and I keep my thumb back and you use your fingers in a claw shape to hold the vegetable, I can literally look you right in the eye and just keep cutting that in a thin slice. I don't even need to look down on the board because I can feel with my fingers where this is, and I can slice paper thin little moons all day long. All right, neaten that up. So what comes after we did batons and we did classic dice? What's the next one? The next one is going to be matchsticks. A lot of times people want to make matchstick sized vegetables. All you do is you do the exact same thing, except you just slice them thinner at about, what is that, a 1/16 of an inch? And I do the exact same thing. Start my knife, it's high, so I can't start it on the tip because I'm going to have my arm in an awkward position. But I just hold it stable with a flat end on my cutting board, place my knife, and I'm like, yep, that's exactly the width of the slice I want, and just push it down and through, straight all the way through the carrot, right? When I get to this point, stack 2 or 3 of these pieces and cut the same way, except this time I can put the tip of my knife down onto the ground and use that push slice technique that I was talking about. And I wind up with a pile of perfect matchsticks. See how that is? So there's the matchstick. There are those batons that we're talking about that brought us to this 1/4-inch dice. And I'll use this little piece here. If I cut matchsticks and line them up and do the same thing I did with the batons, take those perfect matchsticks and I cut them in the same width, that 1/16 of an inch, I can make perfect brunoise or fine dice, which is very nice for some soups and stews or other things that you may need to cut for. So you have sort of those 4 general shapes, right there. If you can do those 4 things, you are going to be way, way, way ahead of the game. There's almost nothing that you won't be able to cook. I'm just turning up the heat on what's going to be our chowder. Celery is really confusing for people because it's curved. And what I do with celery, typically, when you're on the inside of that head of celery, the curves are tighter. The outside, they're broader, right? So this one is from the inside. I'll typically slice this in half and then make my long bar cuts. And if need be, if I want dice, I just line them up, and just like the carrot, except celery is so much softer, I can do that dice. Now, if you do this and you're working in a super fancy restaurant, a chef will come along and say, no good, start over. Why? Because it's not a dice, right? It has a rounded end to it, as opposed to my carrot, which would pass muster. This dice right here would win me any of those Top Chef quick fire knife skills challenges. This one, Tom and Padma and Gail would send me to the back of the line, right? So if you're making something casual like a tuna fish salad or something where you know, just for sandwiches or for the family, I don't think anyone wants to make it perfect. But if you're doing something for a dinner party, you may want to, in which case you're going to want to trim the curved ends off the same way that I did before with my carrots. Just square up your slices. And there's some carrot batons. Let's make those look super nice. Some other things people do that I want to make sure to show you while we're on the topic of general knife skills. Last 2 things I want to show you, and then we'll get to the shellfish part and we'll serve our soup and get to more of your questions. Potatoes, a lot of people cut themselves slicing potatoes, and the reason is it's rocky and it's all over the place and it moves and your board moves. By the way, my board is secured with a damp towel. So how do you then start cutting a potato? It's just a potato. It's not 1978. We're not at Studio 54. It's not beautiful, you know, pink cocaine. It's not a fortune. It's a potato. Just cut a slice off so it's stable and flat, right? And then you can do slices, right? You can do your batons, and you can do the exact same thing if you want to dice potatoes, right? You just cut, take away the curvy ends, stack them up, right? And dice your potato. Super, super simple. What happens if you want to slice your potato and you want the whole circle on there? Oftentimes what I will do is I'll use a mandolin, a slicer, so that if I'm making a pretty gratin or something, I want to let the instrument do the work for me. And so all of those, you know, Ben Rinners and other tabletop slicers are really, really great for that. If you do not have one, make sure that you roll the potato around to find the safest edge and really pay attention and go slowly until you're comfortable doing it a different way. The biggest issue, and where most people have not the most trouble, but certainly the greatest opportunity to work with, are onions, right? So you have here the top of the onion, the bottom of the onion. All of the onion petals, those leaves, are attached to this bottom. So when I peel my onion, I take the top off, I take the bottom off just as much as I need. It's still attached down there. And then I take the paper off. Now, depending on how onions were aged, like garlic, they have to be dried when they come out of the ground. This one is this year's onion. Sometimes at the end of the season, you're getting onions from other places, and you can tell if they peel easily, they're new onions, right? So this is from this season, beautiful onion. And I'm going to cut it in half. Again, tip of the knife down on the board and drive through it. You can see here, those petals of the onion are all being held together, right, by that end of the onion, the root end, right, where the onion root goes down into the ground. That other top is where the onion flower comes out of. Now, what a lot of people will do is they will make slices this way and then slices this way and make their dice. I'm going to show you how to do that, and then I'm going to show you a way that I do it that I think is a little bit safer, okay? And the reason is it's not the up and down strokes where people get cut, it's going sideways. And I see actual professionals on Instagram trying to work their knife in and then yank it out, and I'm like, oh, that person doesn't know how to cut an onion, or they haven't done it a lot. So I'm going to sort of stand awkwardly and do this with you and stick my clams in so those have a chance to cook. First thing that I want to do, and again, don't stand this way, squared up to your board, but I'm doing this so you can see what I'm doing. Start at the heel of your knife. You remember before we were starting at the tip of your knife and working down? Here we're going to start at the heel and pull it forward. And I want to make sure that my knife doesn't skip. There's no burrs on it. I want the knife super sharp. The reason why I want the knife super sharp is so that it actually moves through the onion with my hand, right? So I've honed my knife. I've not sharpened it by putting a new edge on it. I've just honed it, right? There's a big difference. I put new edges on my knives every couple of months. I hone them every half hour of sort of chopping time on my cutting board. So all I want to do is start with the heel of my knife and draw it through. Let the knife blade do the work for me. It's kind of odd to do it in this position, but just draw it through. And I don't cut all the way. I leave them attached there. And with an onion that's an inch tall, maybe you make 3 or 4 incisions, right? Every quarter inch. I just don't go all the way through. Then, tip of the knife. And don't worry, those little pieces that are coming out are not because I'm making a mistake or you're making a mistake. It's just that an onion sometimes has odd shaped pieces. It's not perfect. It's not like a daisy or a marigold where every leaf is the same. But then when I turn it and slice it this way, what happens? Really, really nice diced onion comes out of there. And you go all the way down, then you could deal with the end and use that end for stock or whatever that you want to. I mean, you can keep going down, and I got pretty deep penetration in there, so this thing is going to dice almost all the way to the heel of the onion. Let me show you a way that I find is a little safer to teach beginners. And if you have young cooks in your family and you're worried about kids with first-time knife skills, this is a super easy way to show them how. All you do is actually use the front of the knife, that technique before, and just slice it in 1/4-inch strips. All the way down to the heel. And I've got that last little bit I'll use for something else. So I have all these 1/4-inch slices. And then all I do is come in 1/4-inch intervals this way. When I get to this point, rather than try to fight this unstable object, I put it down, just turn it on its side, and keep going. And it won't flip around or go anywhere. I can even do that last one. And what I have here is I have one piece of onion that sort of fell away. So if I want to use that, I can just make a couple of cuts. It just is a simpler, easier way, I think, to teach a beginner to drop one. This is slightly more advanced because there's more room for error with that lateral slice. So there's your, sort of primer 101 about how to, we're going to need parsley. By the way, this is, you should look in here. My clams are starting to open. I turned one on the, let me fish it out there for you. I let my clams come to room temperature before I put them in, so it's not like putting ice cubes into broth. But you can see here it's actually starting to open, and we just put it in there a couple seconds ago. I just move those around because there's hot spots even in simmering liquid. And I just want to make sure my clams all have an equal opportunity to open. Once they start to open like that, I add my fish and I just let it sit on top because I know my clams need another 3 or 4 minutes. Those cubes of fish will just poach gently in the top of that beautiful broth there. Parsley. Everybody always wants to know about parsley. I don't like the big stems at the bottom, but those little stems that the leaves are attached to, I really like them. They have a lot of flavor, right? So all that I do is I take this bunch and I fold it in half, right? So that my first cut, super fine, and a lot of times this is all I will do to parsley. And the reason is parsley has a really lovely bitter flavor to it that I adore. And I will put sometimes a handful of parsley cut this way into a salad or any kind of dish because I want a lot of parsley, but I want you to bite down on parsley and taste it. If I want to mince my parsley, I'm going to sprinkle it on something. By the way, do you see there? That cut of parsley is what I did right here because you can see it went across some of the leaves. But if I want to mince my parsley, I just rock my knife back and forth a couple times. Now this parsley, you'll notice, is not turning darker. It's not turning color. It's not getting dark green. It doesn't look wet. And the reason is because we washed it and really dried it well. You can over chop parsley and all of those liquids in the parsley come out and the parsley itself starts to oxidize. Yes, parsley oxidizes. So many things do when they're exposed to air. But if you just pass your knife a couple times over, and you notice I always keep one end down and all my fingers, I mean, this is out of habit. I keep my one hand firmly against it and my fingers out of the way. That's just habit because I've practiced. Now, can anyone out there tell me what I'm doing that seems unusual to you when I'm mincing like that or doing fast motions? I did it with the carrot slicing when I went really fast and looked into the camera. I won't make you guess. I choked up on the knife. So if I hold the knife down here, not only do I not get enough pressure to cut something 6-8 inches away, but I don't have control. This can move all over the place and someone can push it. Vicky, try to push the knife left or right. Just push it left or right. Yeah, it's pretty easy to. I don't have much control over it. But if I choke up on it, now try to push it. Yeah, you can't. When I was in Little League, they said if you want to, get control of the head of the bat, the end of it, choke up on the handle. It's the same thing with knife work. Choke up on the handle. The longer the blade, the more I tend to choke up, because then I get more control over where the blade is and it fits more comfortably in my hand.